Peace. This is, goodness, it's a lot of things in this tea. It's yerba mate, guarana, white maca, because I was advised that there's different types of maca. Red maca, white maca. White maca is really good for women. What else is in here? There's a liver and kidney tea. There's a vocal soothing tea that I put in here. Apple cider vinegar is in here. It's a smorgasbord of goodness. So, I try my best. I do yoga every day, every day. And it's a good thing to close the day with yoga, and it's a good thing to start the day with yoga. I'm looking to begin a new routine because I usually end my day with yoga, but I'd like to begin my day with yoga. Really, really helps with balance. And so I want to kind of structure this conversation in the frame of balance. Number one, the balance within, the equilibrium within, but being a contributor to the restoration of the balance of the world. And, self-mastery is harder than punching a clock. The journey of self-mastery is not easy because there's going to be things that come up about yourself that are going to be sometimes not the easiest to process because everybody wants to see themselves in like the most amazing divine light. And we all have that in us, but the question is, are we working up to our potential? Are we working up to our divinity? And sometimes for some people, if the answer is no, it's a hard pill to swallow. I've come to a point in my life where it's not that difficult for me to understand that I have numerous faults, and I am work in progress, and that includes my thinking. So the situation that I've been, in, I don't much like talking about it too, because I'm a very powerful woman. And when you complain about your circumstance, it speaks to a victim consciousness or a sense of powerlessness. Well, if your situation is not ideal, or if there's things that are coming up, why don't you fix it, right? So I'm specifically talking about, when I've referred to some of the like spiritual attacks that I've gone under, and some of the people that have really tried to invade my life. But I've meditated about it, and I said that this was really a necessary step for me. And I had to figure out, well, why would I attract this situation into my life? What did I need, and how did this serve me? And the truth is that I attracted these people into my life because I used them as tools for my ascension. And it's just that simple. I got more out of the situation from them than they got from me. And all I can do is be grateful in that sense, because I pray a lot, and I ask for constant and continuous protection, constant and continuous insight, constant and continuous wisdom, abundance, prosperity. I'm like, why haven't certain things manifested? Well, in order for it's God's favorites. God's not going to set you up to make asinine mistakes. He's going to set you up where you aren't just able to obtain certain things, but to maintain certain things. Because there's a lot of questions like, if you got power, why haven't you manifested the wealth that you're supposed to have? Why haven't you manifested you only have a few people that watch you on YouTube, or you're not very popular on Instagram, and why isn't your message widespread and all these things? But why haven't you manifested? It's imperative. It's absolutely imperative with my observation as a spectator and observer of the world that you have the right mindset before you inherit your blessings. Number one, gratitude. Are you grateful for the things that you already have? How can Allah bless you with more if you're not grateful for what you have. Number two, your mentality, your mindset. Because we've seen story after story after story about people who have obtained but can't maintain. Obtained but are willing to do all kinds of things to maintain. So the spiritual foundation, I was talking to you guys one time about a buddy of mine, Navon. I haven't spoken to Navon in a minute, but I felt a very deep spiritual connection to Navon Smith. He's an entrepreneur. He's a lyricist. He's from Washington, D.C. His story was amazing. Navon is somebody who will always live in my heart. I don't know where he's at. Navon, holla at me. I love you. No disrespect to your wife. She's lovely, but you always will have a piece of my heart. He looked out on like a big brother type thing and gave me some incredible wisdom. And the thing about it is sometimes we focus on the hate, but like when you get some love in your life, it's like when you get some love, like somebody who's just like got love for you, and everything that they say to you is for your betterment. It's just like amazing. So Navon, and this isn't to like gossip. Like I understand if I tell somebody's business, they've already put it out there themselves. When I was talking about Nazir Ra the other day, I mentioned that he had mentioned that he said I think his point was basically like this COVID thing is not that serious. In his opinion, if you're taking care of yourself and your immune system is fortified. That's the reason why he said, I think me and the missus might have gotten COVID the other day. And it was knocked out of our system within like a 24-hour time period. He didn't say he had it. He said he thinks. He said he woke up not feeling 100%. Him and the missus took some ginger, got the garlic, got everything, all the tools that he needs. Big shout out to Nazir Ra, Hidden Power University. Please pick up some products. I've picked up products from him and they work. They're amazing. His monoatomic gold, his silver, colloidal silver. His products are good. But anyways, so when I'm talking about somebody, any information that I'm saying is information they've already put out about themselves. I'm not here to gossip or whatever. So what captivated me, what drew me to Navon Smith was his story. He's from Washington, D.C. And his mom, he didn't know his dad. His mom was hooked on drugs and is a brilliant man. A brilliant man as far as the way that he has... he's had to overcome some life challenges because of being born to, in the 80s, crack hit Washington, D.C. really, 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 really hard. Really, 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 really hard. And a lot of the people that we are relating to or that we interact with day to day are products of the crack cocaine epidemic that hit our city really, really, really hard. And some people were never able to shake that addiction. If you're born to a crack mother, if you're born to a mother who's addicted to a narcotic, you are predisposed to be addicted to a narcotic. In addition to that, it affects your thinking. It affects your ability to absorb information. People are born with tremendous learning disabilities. Some people are born with legitimate disabilities, like being nearly blind. So there's a lot of things that happened in this city, in this town. But I say this to say that Navon has overcome some tremendous challenges despite the family that he was born into, and talks about his story and his music. And my heart really went out to him as far as the things that he's endured and the things that he's been through. And the fact that he was just like, he's like, nah, man, he was so focused. Not like a drinker, not a smoker, not like vegan, just like solid rapper, heavy in the mind, real deep. Was putting me onto the vegan lifestyle in the sense he was here one time, and I was like, come try some of my food, come try some of my vegan food. And he was like, he was the one basically who told me like not to mess with the mock meats. It's like, I don't really mess with mock meats. He's like, you should really be eating like, doing like smoothies and like eating like fresh fruit and vegetables. He's like, yeah, like you got vegans that are doing French fries, you're doing burgers. That's not really healthy, Don't really mess with the mock meats too much. Like he just wisdom, just one of those people who just has a lot of wisdom. So he tells me, make a long story short, mad love for Navon. He tells me, we were having this conversation in LA. Every single year, he go to, his wife works for BET, Black Entertainment Television. Every year they go to BET Awards. And I was in LA at this time, and we were having a conversation over the phone, and I was attending, it was like June, I was attending some of the festivities of the BET Awards or whatever. And he was just like, be careful. He's like, LA is one of those towns that you almost want to write your own Bible. Like, so he said something to the effect, like, write your own 10 commandments. Thou shalt not. Like, what you will not do. Things that you will just never, ever, 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 ever do in your life. Like, write your own 10 commandments. Abide by your own 10 commandments. Abide by these principles. Say, I will never, ever, ever do these things, and stick with that. Because there's a lot of things that can appear to be one way, and you might show up on the scene and it appears like it's just a regular audition. You don't know if the whole thing was a setup. They knew who you were. They were following you. They've been tracing you. They got phone calls. The whole thing was a setup. You show up on the scene for an audition. Everybody around you is an actor. This is a city full of actors, right? And you're the prey, and they're the predators. We've been waiting. We've been waiting for you to arrive. So understand that you just have to have a very high level of a commitment and adherence to things that you will simply just not do, right? Write your own 10 commandments. Much love to Navon. So I say this to say that with the conversation of relationships, there are good men out there. Okay, my father, of course, I talk about him all the time. Just so many men that I've met who have just been like really just decent, good, compassionate, good-hearted. A lot of times they have sisters, a lot of times they have daughters, protective, kind, loving, respectable, dignified, honorable men, and endless love to you all. But the other side of things is that going back to this experience that I had in Washington, D.C., it was very necessary. And I would pray sometimes and meditate, like, I know my Father's looking out for me from up above. Why would Dad allow me to go through this? And I think Dad allowed me to go through this because he knew that I would be better on the other side. He knew that the outcome of enduring this experience will make me more prepared for what's to come. It would reframe my outlook, and it would chip away at my naivety. My dad is from Jamaica, Queens, New York. Descendant far back. He's foundational Black American, but far, far back. We all come from somewhere. My Aunt Margaret had a house in the Exum Islands. So my lineage on my father's side, and Queens. Queens is where a lot of, Brooklyn too, where a lot of the West Indian community reside. Brooklyn too. And so, that's the lineage. So my father's side is technically from the islands, and my mother's side is from West Africa. My dad grew up in New York, born and raised in Queens, and grew up during a time where it was bad. When you go to Harlem now and certain parts of Brooklyn, the gentrification is very evident. There were times where it's not what it used to be, especially during my dad's day. And my dad was a musician. The jazz musicians were, the stars at the time, Miles Davis and John Coltrane and all that, So he grew up in a very, even though my grandma was a seamstress, she was the only black seamstress for Neiman Marcus or Saks Fifth Avenue. So they grew up in like kind of a middle class household in the sense of, he had two working parents, but because of my dad's obsession with music, like me, he kind of got, caught up in a certain crowd. And coming from a religious household, it was a no-no. Jazz music at that time was like gangster music. And so it wasn't acceptable, you know what I'm saying, and all what the lifestyle entailed. But basically, I'm saying this to say that he grew up in an environment that was a lot more hardcore than the environment that I grew up in. And one thing that we talk about, rest in power to Malcolm X's daughter who recently passed away. But when we talk about daughters of the revolution, it's a little bit different, right? So Malcolm, my father, Muhammad Ali, these giants who grew up in a very different environment than we did. So you may be from the streets, but the thing about it is you're making these sacrifices so your children won't have to. So the daughters of the revolution are a little bit different because our parents went through these things. Our parents went through all of what the streets entail, navigating through the drugs and navigating through the crime and navigating through like the really like darkest circumstances in a very cold city like New York. So we wouldn't have to. They endured these things so we wouldn't have to. And so I say this to say that my dad was different than I am as far as him being a lot more street smart because of what he had to go through. He was very street smart. I remember, I had this little backpack and it was like, you remember back in the day, you had that little backpack. It was like from Dahlia's or whatever. And my dad came up to me one time real quiet and unzipped it. And he was like, and I turned around and he was like, yeah, you don't want to have that little backpack. He's just wise, like just more street smart. So I grew up in a very affluent suburb. We were one of the only black families. The other black families were Jack and Jill, Holmes and Martha's Vineyard, total blue blood, AKA, you could say Black Boule. Fathers are engineers and mothers don't have to work. This is how I grew up. My mother wasn't wealthy. We had probably like one of the smallest houses in the neighborhood. But she would be damned if we grew up in a certain environment, right? So we weren't wealthy people. My mom had to work really hard, really, really hard. 2 jobs overnight at a group home. Ended up buying property in Hartford. Just for us to have our small home. I grew up sharing a bedroom with my sister. Me and my sister would take baths together. The boys had one room. Me and my sister had one room. My mom had another room. Small home, right? 2 floors, little cul-de-sac. Yes, our backyard was a mountain. Small home though. We didn't grow up super rich, but we grew up in a very affluent neighborhood. Very affluent. So my background was much different from my father's background, and I was a bit naive, even though I was sneaking out, going to hang out in Hartford with the Shattas to get some culture and whatnot. I grew up in a very privileged town. I went to a very privileged private school. I went to college, from the same school that Jennifer Garner went to my college. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Walt Disney, went to my college. The university I attended was top 30 at the time for private liberal arts, scientists and mathematicians. I didn't really experience what it meant. I didn't experience the very other side of life until I became a mother. And that's when I went from have growing up in like extreme affluence to the opposite, where I was like in line at the welfare line, trying to figure out how to put food on the table, single mom, total single mom, had no money, so I lived half my life around extreme affluence and then half my life in extraordinary poverty. But what I always had was this mind, right? I always had this mind, and I always had the wisdom and the knowledge that my parents gave me. And I come from a family who is hardcore African. Hardcore African meaning like we like the kind of fabric that we come from. Like I come from people who will turn their back on you to some degree out of their love for you, right? When I was being a knucklehead, even in like the spiritual community, you know, I'll be candid, Tahuti Mahatara cut me off. I wasn't able to get herbs anymore from him. He's like, you're not going to be using my name and being a knucklehead. I was listening to Red Pill the other night, and he was talking about Dr. Sebi, and he's like, you know, I think it's an honor that like Dr. Sebi should be, his name should be being used. That's the kind of what he wanted. You know what I mean? He wanted everybody, like the impact that he, for his life, what he endured, he wanted everybody to use his name. But the thing about it is, this man is so powerful that if you're using his name and you're not about that Sebi life, his karma will come bite you in the ass. And I thought that was a real profound point that Red Pill made. You know, a lot of these people who made tremendous sacrifices for us, Malcolm, my father, Martin, Sebi, you know, Dick Gregory, the legends, our ancestors who made tremendous sacrifices for us, you're using their name, but you're not walking that walk. And that's like, it's not blasphemy because they're not God, but that's like, don't think that they're cool with that. So I come from a very hardcore family in the sense of, if you're not acting right, they will cut you off. They will cut you off, because in order to be ready for leadership, ready for the position that you have carved for you, when we talk about mediocrity, it's the idea of that you can do things in a mediocre fashion and that people will always carry your weight. And they will always make excuses for you. And they will always allow you to be mediocre. They will not call you out on your BS. They will not call you out on being a knucklehead. And this is the environment that makes mediocrity conducive. Because when I talk about these Karens, and understand, when I talk about Karens, it's no dig at white women. Not all white women are Karens. It's a specific type of person that has a delusion of grandeur, but is really actually very mediocre. And I always think about, well, what kind of environment? Who lied to you? Who told you that you were more valuable than you are? So the type of family that I come from, they won't allow that. And when in meditation, I'm like, Dad, man, how could you let this happen? And I know my dad would say that this was very necessary for it to chip away at your naivety, chip away at your gullibleness, understand the world that you live in, and allow you to become very, 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 very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allow you to develop a very tight bond and a very tight relationship with Allah, because that will be your foundation for what's to come. If you've got that closeness, that tight bond with the Most High, you're only going to stray so far. So the question is, would you allow your child to go through something very hard, very adverse, a very adverse situation, if you knew that they were going to be better on the other side? A lot of times people feel like you're always going to have this security blanket. So no, I don't want my daughter to go through these things. I don't want my daughter to go through these hardships in life and things like that. But what if they don't have that security blanket? And the thing about it is, even if you have the means to provide that security blanket, are you setting them up to be the best and most effective leader imaginable. Because I've witnessed so many people who obtain these things but can't maintain these things, and then they crawl back into their comfort of like almost like a socialist network when they mess up constantly, and then people have to constantly cover for them, and people have to constantly look out for them, and they have constantly, and they're a liability, but nobody really wants to tell them this because they make rookie mistakes because they were always coddled. So I'm happy. I manifested this situation. I manifested this adverse situation so I could be a better person, and I could be more fit to lead. I could be more fit for what's to come. I could be more fit to not just obtain the things that I'm working for, but also to maintain the things that I am working for. When it came to certain things, I just knew that it was like, certain questions that I had, right? And this is how it gets tricky. And guys, I don't have all the answers to everything. I really don't. I don't know everything by any stretch of the imagination. There's like so much stuff that I don't know. But as I was learning, and this has been an acceleration of my learning this past few years, and it expedited my learning to the nth degree. But the thing about it is trust, right? So when we talk about the idea of trust is really rooted in the trust of oneself. You have women out here saying, I don't trust men. I don't trust men. Some women say, I don't trust men because some of these women, I was molested by my uncle. I was raped. I was abused. I was pimped. They try to prostitute me. And now, because of her experience, she doesn't trust men. Yes, it's legitimate, the reason why she doesn't trust men. It's legitimate. But what if a good man comes to her who's got nothing but love for her, who has tremendous compassion for her? And because she's so riddled with trauma and resonating on such a lack of trust frequency, that man that was sent to her as a blessing from the Most High, she can't even trust the fact that he's going to actually nurture her and be good to her and love her. Because all she's used to is guys trying to exploit her and pimp her and use her. And I feel the same, and I know if this video happens to get in the hands of a Umar Johnson or a Tariq Nasheed, they're going to disagree with me. I already know. I love you guys very much from a distance. I don't know you guys, but I love you guys. But I feel like that's kind of the same thing with our relationship with Black people's religion. I'm making a generalization, okay, guys? Our relationship with white people or with other people, right? The collective has been so mistreated and abused and exploited and sabotaged continuously that there is a lack of trust. And when people are saying, we don't understand why Blacks and Latinos have been so reluctant to get the jab, it's like, why wouldn't you understand when all we have is evidence of a government that has been extremely abusive to us and masterminded our genocide, mass incarceration, contemporary slavery? These things are very daunting. There is a collective trauma. There is a collective mistrust. There is a collective collection of experiences that don't speak to the other side. It only speaks to people getting got by you guys. So you can't blame generally the Black community for not trusting you guys. But what if, and please, shout out to my Pan-Africanness, but please follow me here. If you are a student of life, that means that the good, the bad, the in-between is still your teacher. You are a pupil. You can learn from anything and you can learn from anyone. What if the sage? What if the guru? What if the person who is here to actually help you does not come in the form in which you thought they would? Do you reject their help based off of your collection of experiences? Is it possible that there are people that don't look like you who don't want to exploit you and victimize you, abuse you, mistreat you? Is it possible? You see, with this whole thing, this self-mastery thing, which is not easy, it's really not easy. Because it's like trauma can be like intertwined in your DNA. So, in theory, I can traumatize you so much that I won't have to do anything after that. I can mess with you psychologically so much and damage your trust and your belief that after that I won't have to do much. Because all you'll do, predicated upon the trauma that I induce, is self-sabotage. You will gravitate towards people, places, and things that will orchestrate your self-sabotage. You will reject assistance and help based off of the way that I traumatize you. You will look at every single person from a specific lens and apply the trauma that I induced on you to every single person that looks like me. Okay, guys, what we're up against, all right? What we're up against is not anything that is not well thought through, okay? MK Ultra, mind control tactics, military tactics, these people, when we talk about the darkest scientists, the darkest mixed with like the darkest occultists, mixed with like the most like wicked witches and like all of this very dark stuff. These people came together and masterminded these things, right? So it's not like if you fall victim, and I'm not here to pacify anybody or blow smoke up anyone's ass, but if you fall victim to some of these things, understand that these are forces that are really, really nefarious, and they work in a very collective fashion, and they have some evil geniuses that have mastermind ways to keep you psychologically in bondage. Like, if I can get you to hate white people, then you will automatically apply a lack of trust, exploitation, abuse, and all these things to white people, and you will never ever trust one to do business with one, to be friends with one. That's the seed that I planted in you. But what if you come across one who's not like the others? So that applies to men, right? Men. You got a lot of people who are in relationships right now. And, for me, there are certain parts of me that I keep very sacred, because there has to be certain things that are not for everybody. And in this situation that I have gone through, I have people that have been like so desperate for me to like give them attention, so desperate for me to talk to them, so desperate for me to share my ideas and my intellectual capacity with them. So desperate just to take my energy and my creativity and just desperate to leech off of me. And part of the reason that they wanted me to be single was for that reason. You know how they have that saying, these hoes be for everybody. Like they are empty in their lives and they can't find somebody who would ever stimulate them intellectually like a girl like me. They're bored out of their minds. They're like, nah, we don't want somebody. We don't want a man to be able to get all of that. Because understand, in a relationship, you feed each other. That's why when it comes to the conversation of relationships, I do understand the idea of somebody wanting to be single in a certain sense, because when it comes to, especially somebody like me, I'm a very generous lover. A lot of times that generosity could go to yourself. You might have a very big purpose, and that purpose may require you to feed yourself in a certain sense, to the encouragement that you would give to your lover, the attention that you would give to your lover, the conversation and the nurturing that you would give to your lover, you give to yourself. I say this to say that if you have a big purpose, you have something you have to do, that might be what you have to do. You may have to just be single because you may need to give all that time and that attention, all that nurturing, all that, things going on with you to yourself and to your craft. And that's one of the benefits of being single. But they also understand that, they want to use you in every single kind of way. And so the nurturing that you have, the love in your heart, that your intellectual capacity, your conversation, all of these things, if you are in a relationship, that means that they might not get to feed off of you. They don't get to converse with you. And my thing is, it's really not my thing, is the law of reciprocity. What are you doing for me? I know that you're bored, right? That's another thing when I was talking about, a lot of times, it's going to be balanced. Like I said, there are amazing men, but a lot of times, have you ever been out on a date, ladies, and you're like, man, I would be having more fun if I was alone. This is so boring. What are you getting out of that? What is the reciprocity? What is the exchange in that? If I'm the life of the party and I'm fun, and you love talking to me, and you're like, wow, you're making points that I never considered, and I'm all these things. What am I getting from you? Where's the reciprocity in this situation? You are leeching off of me. You are leeching off of my talent. You are leeching off of my intellectual part. You are leeching off of me. Meanwhile, you're living your boring life, waiting for me to be able to be your fun. And that's not what I signed up for. And guys, you're seeing all this stuff come from me because it's really this is really very annoying. You support your wife. You make sure she's comfortable, but you want to try to keep me in isolation so you can use me to provide entertainment for you, or to break up the monotony of your boring life. Or what am I getting out of that? What's in that for me? What is me talking to you? What do I get out of that? Oh, here she goes. And this is the reason why we want to take her down. She's just gotten a little too cocky. And this is what I really don't like about this girl. She's too cocky. Her ego is just crazy. It's out the roof. We need to humble her. This is what I can't stand about her. We need to humble her. Cocky is synonymous with arrogant. Arrogant means that you have an inflated sense of self. That means that you're here, but you think that you're here. If you are here and you know that you're here, that is self-actualization. That is self-knowledge. The only reason that you'll be here and they want you to think that you're here is so they can use, abuse, and exploit you. Period. Because if I didn't have anything valuable to say, then you wouldn't be listening. And you wouldn't be trying to prey on me. Or you wouldn't be leeching off of me and using my creative content and using my lingo and practicing the things that I say that organically come out of my mouth as if you thought of the shit yourself. So you can sound clever and smart as if you thought of the shit yourself when you go and be among your friends. And you really didn't have anything interesting to say. Why? Because you take no risks. You live a boring ass life. You hang out with the same kind of people. You're an elitist. You live in a bubble and you don't relate with people like me. You don't converse with people like me. You talk about the same shit every single day. Your life sucks and you're boring. So you leech off of me. Oh, here she goes. This is why we have to humble her. This is why we need to humiliate her. No, I don't buy that. I think that's bullshit. I don't buy it at all. I don't think that this is why you need to humble me or humiliate me. I think you want to exploit me and use me. I think that that's why. And my thing is, even if I was cocky, even if I did have an inflated sense of self or arrogance, why does that bother you so much? Number one, if I don't share your value system, if I say, you know what, I get it, it's their popularity and their wealth or their fame that gives them a sense of arrogance, but I don't know how they got their money. They could have gotten it in a very honorable way, worked hard for it, prayed about it, and got it in a very dignified way. Or they could be child sex traffickers, pedophiles, pimp women, sell ass, go to Dubai and get defecated on by Arab princes. I don't know. And I'm not that nosy. I don't know how you got your wealth. But if you did get it in one of those ways, I don't believe that that's something that is anything to be honored, anything to be haughty about. There's people with blood on their hands, had to kill people to get their wealth, had to kill their kids to get their wealth, had to do all types of things to obtain and maintain their wealth. So somebody who took the life of their own child, why aren't you trying to humble them just so they can have? That's not something. So it's like, that's the reason why I don't believe it. We don't like her. She's gotten too cocky. Let's humble her. Really? This is what you use your power to do, to humble people? Not to fight pedophilia, right? Not to combat policymakers who are using men and women as lab rats, non-consensual lab rats, masked as mass incarceration. Inmates don't have the option of whether they're going to get the jab or not. They're putting things in their food. They're watching them like lab rats, human beings. No, we're not going to use that, our power to combat those things. We want to use our power to humble her. Something's not adding up. You got no smoke for people who are rapists, abusing people, hurting children. There's no, but you're so bothered by somebody's disposition, their ego, their arrogance, their cockiness. That's what you're using your. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. If people want to know where I'm going to move, I don't know. Why is it your business? You've gotten too comfortable, because I'm an open person. You feel like my life is for your consumption. I'm not here for you. I'm here for my child. I'm here for my family. I'm here for my soulmate. I'm here for my creator. I'm here for my ancestors who've sacrificed tremendously for me. I'm here for the children. I'm here for the young girls. I'm here to boost the self-esteem and confidence of the young girls. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here for you clowns. I would find something to do. Go find something to do. The reason I said, you're not going to find me in certain places as far as like auditions and things like that. You're just not going to find me in certain places because this experience has really given me a chance to gaze into the inner workings of these people, these very dark and sinister people. And what I realized is that there's nothing that they want more than to chip away at our confidence. That's their fixation. Us not feeling good about ourselves. So part of the reason that they're salivating at me showing up potentially to an audition is just so they can humiliate me. I want her to feel rejected. This girl's gotten way too cocky. Oh, I can't wait to have at her. This woman will have no self-esteem left by the time that we're done with her. Oh, I can't wait to destroy her. I can't wait. I don't care how good she is. I'm just going to say no. Why would I, knowing how you get down, put myself in this circumstance? And that's when I go back to the ladies. Ladies, on one end, when we talked about, the casting couch, on one end, I'm like, yeah, that's really wrong of these guys. But on another end, it's like, you kind of knew how they got down. Why did you show up? These weirdos who feed off of your humiliation. I don't play your game. I'm not interested in playing your game because it wasn't my ancestors that masterminded your game. Dr. Sebi wasn't at the table for your game. Malcolm wasn't at the table for your game. Dick Gregory wasn't at the table for your game. My father wasn't at the table for your game. They weren't a part of masterminding these rules. And understand that even with our culture, yes, there's a process that people do have to get vetted. We believe in that, similar to the sororities and the fraternities. We believe in this idea of breaking someone to make someone, so to speak. But the thing is, we are not dark like you guys. We are not evil like you guys. We don't do the evil things and the wicked things that you guys do. So when it came to creating the rules of this game, we weren't at the drawing board for that. Because the things that you guys do, we would never do those things. So why am I signing up for a game that my ancestors had no part in the rules of creating? Because they would never, ever do certain things. They would never, ever. Yes, in my culture, I'm sure that there are rituals and there are vetting processes of humbling somebody and allowing somebody to extract information and all of these things. But it's truly organically to build you up. Truly organically to build you up. To build your being of the most service to mankind is the objective. You being in absolute adherence to the Most High is the objective. So all that slutting you out and smutting you out and humiliating you and all that, that's not a part of the fabric that I come from. The people that I come from. That's not, those would not be the rules. They would not. So I'm not interested in playing your game. Because we don't think the same way. We don't prioritize the same thing. That's not the rules that we abide by. And if I'm talking that power, which I am, right? I'm talking about power right now. Because I need my people to get with the program and understand that the games that you play and the rules that you abide by were not created by you. In the bondage, our ancestors would never have us in bondage the way that they have you in bondage. That's not us. The way they slut you out and all that's not us. That's not our people. That's not what we do. That's not us. So you're playing their game by their rules. And all of the ways that they have, I mean, even in their game, you know, I'm going to wrap up this conversation, but even within their game, it's like, it sucks for you guys because it's like, even within their game, like, they don't really want you in. And it's not so cut and dry as racism, because a lot of people get fixated on racism. It is racism, but racism is more used as a tool and a tactic. It's just one of those things that in order for them to have, that you have to be a have-not. It really just comes down to that. And you have been selected to be a have-not. You have to stay in a perpetual state of being a have-not in order for them to be haves. So we could talk about racism all day. It's just they've selected certain people that they want to have as have-nots. And in order for them to have, you have to be a have-not. And the only reason that they will allow you to join in on their game is if they can use you. That's it. That's it. If they can't use you, you're useless to them. And they use you for a plethora of reasons. They use you for the optics of equality. Well, look at these athletes and look at these stars. Look at Oprah and look at Michelle and look at Barack. But it's like they don't reflect the masses. The masses are have-nots. But at this stage in the game, it would be too obvious if all the haves were white and all the have-nots were black. They got to sprinkle some in there for the optics. But here's the thing. Now that you're in bondage, you understand that the reason why it was such a bad idea is because our ancestors would never say, oh, now we want your kids. Our ancestors would never say that. Anyways, y'all. Much love. Much love. Until next time, y'all. Peace.